Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today, our new edition of the Database Cloud Service Office Hours. I thought I'd start us up or kick us off today with what are they exactly? My name is Tammy Bednar. I'm a Senior Director of Product Management, and I'm focusing on our Database Cloud Services portfolio. Well, at least the managed ones at least. And we'll talk about what those are in just a minute. Also joining me today is Maqsood Alam. Hi, Maqsood. How are you today?
Hey, Tammy. Hey, everyone.
Okay, so we're going to get started and talk about our different cloud services. By the way, if you're online, the chat box is open. I'm happy to take your questions. If we can't answer them, we'll get back to you on that as well. This is your time. We want to make it very fun. We want to make it interactive. We also want to make it informative. That's what this is for, to raise your awareness of what kind of services and functionality and features that we offer you today. So why don't we talk about what those are? So we have a number of the choices when you choose to deploy your database in the cloud. And if we start over with this chart, you can see that we first have database on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And this is really when you just kind of spin up a VM with some CPU and storage. And you can see that this is one of those options where you fully manage that complete infrastructure and database. You can choose your database editions from 11G, 12.1, 12.2, and 18C. The max database size on these particular deployments are 40 terabytes. You range in CPUs from 1 to 24. You have some block storage. Unfortunately, you cannot run real application clusters in this environment, and you have control over the backups. And if you want this disaster recovery using DataGuard or Active DataGuard, then you'll also have to set that up as well. Maqsood, anything to add on the just kind of spinning up a database in the cloud on this particular option?
Yeah, so you guys will realize there's a lot of work if you go this route compared to the DBAS options we will discuss in a bit. So, so it's starting from spinning a VM. So you're getting your hosts and you're doing all the installations, figuring out, all the prereqs and all those sort of things that you normally do on premise. So there's a lot of work if you go this route. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned that. So the next option or choice of deployment is called DBAS. And this is where you have an option to either run the database in the VM or bare metal. And this, starting with DBAS, you have a console when you go to cloud.oracle.com and sign in. On the console, you can select whether you want a VM or a bare metal option to deploy your database in. And then from there, the console helps guide you on, the shape of how much CPU, how much resources you want from a storage perspective. You can have the choice to deploy Standard Edition, Enterprise Edition, high performance, extreme performance as well. Your database size can be anywhere from 9 terabytes, which is triple mirrored, by the way, to 40 terabytes. You can have 2 to 52 CPUs. Now, on the VM, you can actually have the choice to deploy a rack database. On bare metal, you can only deploy the single instance databases. You can back up to the OCI object store. You can also use the backup service that's available in the cloud as well. And in DataGuard, you can have DataGuard set up across the availability domains within that region, or you can go use DataGuard across regions via the VCN peering. Any other thoughts that maybe we should add on this, Maqsood, with DBAS?
Yeah, one thing is in bare metal, you can have more than one Oracle homes. And you can have more than one databases. So whereas in the VM, you don't have that option. So in bare metal and Exadata, you can have more homes, and kind of have different versions in your homes. So that's one. In rack, I think you mentioned it's only a 2-node rack.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Right, so it cannot go more than 2 nodes. It's only for the VM, not for bare metal, VM, and also, of course, Exadata, uh, which is on the right side. So we haven't yet covered Exadata yet. And then on Active Data Guard, across regions, if you want to configure it, it is a manual task. So you have to go on a command prompt, not really done through a push of a button thing, as it is possible with across ADs.
Okay, those are really good tips. I'm glad you added that in.
Yeah.
Okay, and then as we move, if you're really interested in, I think hopefully you guys have all heard about our engineered system called Exadata. It is now over 10 years old, which is, I can't believe it's already been 10 years since we first introduced it. And Exadata is a well-known platform that we use in our engineered systems to create this converged environment, to be able to run the Oracle stack and Oracle databases on the Oracle hardware. And we've done a lot of work to increase the performance, the efficiency of running databases on Exadata. No different in the cloud. We provide several options to run your databases on Exadata in the cloud. One of those, or two of those options, are called the Exadata Cloud Service or Cloud at Customer. Now, the versions that you can run on the Exadata Cloud at Customer as well as Exadata Cloud Service, again, range from 11, 12, and 18C. Now, by the way, 19C is available on the Exadata on-premise if you're interested in it. We have some other ways that you can try out 19C, which we can always talk about later on. But the 19C will be coming fairly soon on the services as well. Extreme performance. Now, again, the manual is customer controlled as far as when you apply patches, also making backups. You need to make that decision on when you want to back up your database. Since this is an Exadata platform, you can have databases in sizes of petabytes. You can have 1 to hundreds of CPUs. The storage on the platform, of course, is Exadata, and with Exadata we have flash and also fixed storage as well. Rack is, I believe, is the default that you can use, but you can also create single instance databases as well. So there is an option for the Exadata Cloud Service. When you provision a database, automatically it's using multi-tenant. You can manually create single instance databases if you want, but we would encourage you to use the console itself to help you provision these databases much, much faster as well. Again, DataGuard is available across the availability domains and across regions as well. Maqsood, what is your thought on, have you had any opportunities to create single instance databases on the cloud, Exadata Cloud Service, or any other good tips for our attendees today on this?
Yes, I did. And it's actually, I don't know if you guys have worked with managing an Exadata system before, but having it on the cloud with push of a button provisioning and managing the Oracle managed, infrastructure, that's a win-win situation, right? It's a huge value proposition. It's one of our best platforms we have out there, as Tammy said, in the last 10 years. And it gives you extreme performance. This is the platform if you have, large requirements, right, in terms of CPUs and storage. As you can see, the other platforms do not give you more than, say, 52 CPUs. It's only the Exadata Cloud Service that can, go beyond that, and also the autonomous, as we'll touch upon it. But yeah, this is a huge value that we bring for our customers, that they can, with the point of a click of a button, they can provision Exadata systems, connect to it, start loading data, and getting the benefits of the performance, the extreme performance we provide on the platform.
Fantastic. And then finally, kind of rounding out our managed databases that we offer in the cloud is, of course, our Autonomous Database. Our Autonomous Database is not only runs on the Exadata platform, and so you get all the full features and functionality of the Exadata platform and a converged engineer system. We've also automated a lot of the manual tasks. And put in all the best practices that we've learned about running databases in an optimized and performant manner. On the Autonomous Database is one image, but what we've done is we've optimized it based on a workload. So if, for example, you have a analytics or a warehouse type workload, when you provision an Autonomous Database, you can select to choose the Autonomous Data Warehouse. It's optimized in many ways, and we'd love to keep that for another topic on an upcoming office hours for you and more information. And then also we have an option of the workload for OLTP, which is transaction processing. So if you have mixed kind of workloads where you have transaction processing as well as wanting to run analytics on that same type of, on that same data, then the autonomous transaction processing option is a great way to utilize the autonomous database. Now, the autonomous database, not only do we have best practices, but we also manage the infrastructure for you as well as the patching. So a lot of manual tasks that maybe you spend your time on today, you don't have to worry about it or you don't have to think about it because it's automatically done for you. One of those is backups. When you create or provision a database in the autonomous, one of the autonomous databases, the backups are automatically scheduled and taken for you, which is a great thing to not have to worry about in all the other tasks that you have to look at or work on today with the database. We really look at the autonomous database as a way to allow you to really free up and be focused on the data and the business today. Now, with the autonomous database, the only version you can run is the version that's currently running on the autonomous database platform. Today, that is version 18C. You'll hear more about 19C capabilities and being able to use that on the autonomous database, excuse me, over the next few months. Excuse me. You can have databases up to 128 terabytes. If you need more, let us know and we can work with you on that. You can deploy or provision an autonomous database starting with 1 CPU all the way up to 128. Of course, we use all the Exadata platform as well. I'm so sorry. And then the backups go to are made to an object store. Now, this is a private object store where we make those backups, and we also mirror those across the availability domains. Maqsood, any good tips to add on the autonomous database option?
Yeah, so one difference between autonomous and the other services we just touched upon is in autonomous you get a PDB, for you. So you don't get SSH access. You cannot log in to the host. This is Oracle managed. That's the reason we lock you out of those activities, right? So you get a PDB, you connect to it. It is available, out of the box with all the optimizations that we have. In 19C for autonomous transaction processing specifically, we added auto indexing feature, which you may have heard about. So this is, a big feature in 19 that we are touting, and it's basically going to take care of creating all the required indexes for the workload for your schema. So you don't really have to go in with the right indexes. You let your workload run for a bit, and Oracle will figure out what the right indexes are. And if you already have indexes, it will figure out what are not needed as well. So that's a cool feature to try out. It's in transaction processing. And I think, as Tammy mentioned, there's slight differences between ATP, transaction processing, and ADW, which is Autonomous Data Warehouse. It's the same database, same version. We just configure it a bit differently, just because the workloads have different nature. So to just accommodate those natures of workload, we have to make some changes. Like for example, in transaction processing, you won't be doing much parallelism. So we give you so-called services that you actually connect that do not have parallelism turned on. Uh, so that's just one difference. But but this is just out of the box. You can just create it and just plug in your front ends and start using these databases. One other point is the provisioning of autonomous database is very, very quick than the other methods, right? So the other methods, they have to install the software, stand up your instances. So they have to go through all the installation steps, right? So that takes some time. Could be an hour, it could be 45 minutes to get your instance ready. For autonomous, it's usually a few minutes, less than five. Less than 5 minutes, you have your instance up. It could be 1 to 5 minutes. It's pretty quick. We do a different provisioning internally the way we give you the instance, right? So that's because it's a PDB and it's just being turned on, and there's several optimizations we do in the provisioning steps. So we can give it to you very, very quickly.
And not only that, Maqsood, I wanted to add that when you provision autonomous database, you automatically get a 2-node rack too, as well. So we implement high availability right off the bat.
True.
Excellent. Okay, so now you've kind of got an overview of the different cloud services, or I should say the managed cloud services that we offer today on the for you today on the Oracle Cloud. So where do you find all this information about the cloud services as well? Somehow we tend to make it hard to find information. I'm not sure why, but I've listed here 3 different places where you can find information about our database cloud services. The first one are the blogs. I know that you guys probably on blogging, because I do it all the time too, is searching for a different topic. But if you want to go directly to our blogs to find information, you just go to blogs.oracle.com/database. And if you click on the little hamburger on the right-hand side, you can see a drop-down menu of some categories. One of those are new features. And when we come out with new features on our cloud services, we like to put a blog out. So there's a new features category. There's an autonomous database category. There's also databases, developer, etc. So if you take a look at our database blog, you can see lots of good information that's being shared by our product managers as well as our marketing team. The second blog is blogs.oracle.com/oracle-database. This one is targeted towards our database release features. There's some great information about 19c out there as well. So if you've been wondering about 19c, by the way, it was just released on Linux as well on premise. Take a look at those blogs. You can see some great information. From a documentation point of view, if you go to docs.oracle.com/en/cloud, that will list all the different cloud documentations that are available. You can see different topics. For the database cloud services, if you go to the platform, the category, you can see a drop down or a listing of all the different cloud services to click on that documentation. From a web pages perspective, if you go to cloud.oracle.com/database, there's a page that will list all these different cloud services that we talked about today, so that you can see more information. It also has links to the documentation, some FAQs, pricing, videos. Also, and by the way, if you like analytics and you're interested in our autonomous data warehouse, we have a tools page that lists all the different tools that Maqsood's team has validated, where you can easily connect your favorite analytics tool into the autonomous data warehouse database to continue running those. So you don't have to give up your favorite analytics tools. Just another little note or a hint there. And then finally, we've kind of been changing our Oracle.com pages. We've been updating them or modernizing them. And we used to have something called OTN. to get to those pages, the technology pages, which our product managers spend a lot of time updating those, you go to www.oracle.com/database/technologies. That's where you'll find a jump-off page to all the different database technologies. It also has a jump-off page or links to our cloud services as well. So one of the important things to get to the cloud is migrating your workload. Recently, we've done a lot of work looking at all the different tools that you can use to migrate to the cloud. And so great work by Ricardo on our high availability team put this page together. And so you can take a look at all the different tools that you can use to migrate to the cloud. He has set up this page so you can go to or select the database version that you currently have, and then below that, that will list all the different tools and services that are available to help you migrate to the cloud. So if you haven't seen this page here, I would definitely encourage you to take a look at it and get your feedback on that. Maqsood, anything on any good tips before we go to the next slide?
This is actually a very cool resource in the link Tammy is sharing. Otherwise, you would have to sift through so many documents on MetaLink and go through the documentation, because just to get your migration method, that's a big ordeal. You know, there's several types of sources and platforms you can be on, cross-platform or cross-Indian, you know, different versions. The options can get very complicated.
Yeah.
And it's very, you know, it's a science to get the right method.
Yeah.
So this is very, very cool. You just, you know, click your sources, click your targets, and it will point to you what options are available. What's the MAA method to get you there the quickest time, and you know, all the different options are listed out. When you click on the option, it will pull you right to the note, the MetaLink note, with the detailed steps as well. So very, very cool. So that's nice work by Ricardo.
Yes.
So yeah, and you have basically, I mean, if you look at it, it's going to be a platform migration going to Linux. So whatever your source is, if it's a Windows or a Spark, it's going to be you know, cross-platform for those. And if it's a Linux, you know, it's same Indian, then it's going to be, you will have more options to migrate. All right, you can use some of the, like DataGuard, for example, works on the same Indian and not cross-platform. So yeah, and for autonomous, you have the data pump method to migrate for the time being. So we are going to add other methods, but for now, that's the method available.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then on our next topic, we just want to kind of talk about excuse me, what's new in the autonomous database. Let me go to that page, Maqsood, and then you can let's see. And then I want to share the page. There we go. There we go.
Yeah. You want to scroll down to January of 2019? Yep.
Scroll down to where?
January 2019. So
you want to go all the way back? Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Unless someone has any questions, they can ask.
Okay.
No questions. Okay. So yeah, we have been adding more features to the autonomous line of products. You know, even prior to January, I don't want to go all the way back. So I'll just touch upon some of the big ones. So in January, we added support for Parquet files. So if you know big data and Hadoop, you probably heard about Parquet files and Avro files as well. So these are special files that, you know, it's like database files. So in Parquet specifically, you know, the file has the format, you know, as one area where it can hold the definition of the file itself, right? So you don't need to inquire, you know, to outside of the Parquet files to know what is in the file. So that's one thing. And then it has data in columnar format. Uh, so columnar format is good for analytics, for large data sets, for scanning, doing aggregations, and so forth. So that's the reason Parquet is in existence. So in big data systems, to do any optimizations, which are doing large amounts of scans and things like that, they use Parquet, and the readers that actually access the Parquet files, they can do a lot of processing inside. Like, for example, they could do column projections and only give you the column that is needed, or or they can apply where clauses, right? So filter and column projection, those are the two main optimizations you get with Parquet. So we added support to read this file in autonomous database, and you can create an external table that builds on this file. And if you look at some of the stats, like how much IOs are going on a Parquet file versus a CSV file. So I mean, the other option is a CSV file, right? In Parquet files, you can get those savings of due to column projections and your filtering clauses being applied directly in those readers, right? So you get those savings, and you can look at those stats in your monitoring pages in Autonomous and see that. So that's a good addition going on. Can you go up to February? Yeah. So we started supporting app continuity. So in 18 and 19, you must have heard about TAF, Transparent Application Failover, and FAN. We have had this since 9i and improved it all the way along, right? So these are ways to protect the client when there is a failure in the database side, or a connection hang, or any issues beyond the client, which the client doesn't know what's happening. So that client can get notified and take appropriate action. So in 18 and 19, we enhanced this considerably. The new name for this is Transparent Application Continuity, TAC, TSE. And in Autonomous Database, we added support. So the clients, when they connect, they can initiate these failovers automatically. So from the client side, there is nothing needed. You just have to be on the right version and using the right technology. For example, you have to use OCI, right, and the supported clients when this feature, to invoke this feature behind the scene. And on the database side, you just have to enable it. So it's just like 2-hour presentation on this thing itself. So it's a lot of technology behind the scene. The idea is for the clients, they do not see any glitches when things happen, and their transactions are recorded, and the server knows how much was committed, and the client knows how much was submitted, so they can reconcile when the connection gets back up. So it's a very, very cool feature. Going on to March, right? So in March, we added cloning. So there's a lot of requests from our customers to support cloning on the autonomous side. So now you can take an existing autonomous database and clone it. When you clone it, you have an option to make a full clone with all the data, or just a metadata only clone with only the definitions and not the data. And it's an exact clone in that sense. We are carrying over all the stats and any of the other settings you may have done to your service, like configuring resource manager roles and things of that nature. So we added that support for cloning. By the way, there is also a request for cloning from backups. So that is not there yet, but it's being worked upon. We also added support to connect through our fast connect option, using public peering methods to the autonomous. Previously, the fast connect was not an option before March. Now it is. If you want to learn more about fast connect, it will be on our OCI pages, our Oracle Cloud Infrastructure pages. It's one of the ways to connect to our cloud using using your metro area networks and a provider that gives you maybe a 10 gigabit connectivity. So that's a feature we added. And we also unified the UIs for autonomous data warehouse and autonomous transaction processing. If you saw our UI before March, we had, you would land up into one of the two autonomous offerings based on the clicks you would do from the OCI page, but now you will land into one unified page which says autonomous database, but there will be a drop down where you will select your type of autonomous database. It's called a workload type. You will just select your ATP or ADW from the drop down to focus on the autonomous database of your choice. So we added that. So going up in April, uh, so network ACLs are just whitelist IP addresses that we added support for within autonomous. And by the way, most of these are already there in the other offering for which is our DBaaS offering, database as a service, non-autonomous DBaaS offerings. Just for the autonomous, as I said, it's a special database. You get a PDB, Oracle manages it, you are logged on for a lot of things. So that's the reason we are slowly adding more and more features. So network ACLs, you can whitelist IP addresses or subnets that can access your service. Similar to Parquet files, we added support for Avro files. Avro is another format. It's actually a standard for serialization and deserialization. When you communicate through the network, you're passing data over. So that's a big data, and actually programming, paradigm of. They also call it marshalling and unmarshalling. So when you pass data structures over to another, program, that's what you do. You have to marshal and unmarshal at the destination. So for that format and that project, it's an Apache project. So they also built a format for a data file, which supports similar things as Parquet, like it has the structure of the file embedded in the file itself. And also whether it supports changes to the structure. So does Parquet. So if you have 4 columns before, now you added a 5th one, that is also kind of added into the file. So we added support for this as well. In April, you can create an XML table on the same method as you use for the Parquet files. Changing of the license type, this is a simple thing. We have 2 options for licensing. You can bring your own. You have a different paste rate if you do that. If you can convert your on-prem licenses to the cloud, it's obviously cheaper. And then you can obviously buy cloud credits and buy the license with software license, the compute and OCI, all of it as well. So then there was no way to change the license type once you built a service before. Now you can, you can just modify it. And in May, right? So I didn't miss any. So in May, we added quite a few, features. So you can, and actually we just added the IP, the CPU and IO shares just 2 days ago, I believe. This is a brand new thing that went in. So, we have resource manager, that plays in the autonomous database, and we give you, depending on what type of database you have, either 3 or 5 service names to connect, right? So in ADW, you get 3 high, medium, and low. In ATP, you get 2 additional, which is TP transaction processing and TP urgent. The difference between these 5 is the allocation of resources, which are basically your CPU and parallelism, right? But those resource management groups that are already created, you could not, it was not recommended for you to change it before. Now you can change it through a UI. So that's the new thing that went in. OMC, if you're not sure what OMC is, it's our enterprise manager offering in the cloud. To manage our databases, obviously you can use enterprise manager in the cloud, add autonomous database as a target, starting actually just from May. Yeah. Uh, so it's a brand new thing as well. It was there last month as well, so that's why I was just checking. So OMC integration with Autonomous is now possible. The good thing here is, Autonomous comes with its own monitoring screens. If you have worked with it, right? So you can look at, say, monitored SQL, like running SQL. You can look at plans. You can, of the SQL, you can download the plan, if you will, and it has its own set of monitoring capabilities, but those are limited, right? So it's not, you cannot really pull an AWR report, right, through those screens. So now with integrating with OMC, you can pull AWR reports, look at the performance hub, group your databases, and look at metrics and do a lot of those things you could do with Enterprise Manager. And going down to pre-authenticated URLs, so you can access files in the object storage. Like, if you have a Parquet file, an Avro file, a text file, you would put in a cloud storage because you don't have access to the file system on the host, right? So you would use our OCI object store, put those files in there by going to the object store UI, or you can use our REST APIs or our CLIs or the SDK. So you push the file in there, and then you access it. So how you access it, you need a credential, right? So you need to authenticate yourself to access that OCI object store file. So with pre-auth URLs, you can eliminate the use of credential. So within OCI buckets and files, we have something called pre-auth. You can just, for a time being, you can enable it. So that particular file does not need authentication. You have actually pre-authorized it. Or you can set it for a long time or a short time, because it is a little bit risky to run with it, right? So you are exposing your data to a URL. So anybody pretty much who has a URL can access it. So it's good for loading, if you want to turn it on for a short bit of time and use that file without the credential. Otherwise, you have to define a credential to access the file. Right? So it's a nice thing we added that support. This pre-auth was there from a few months before, but we added support for that in ADB just recently. And going down, support for XML, we added support for XML types. By the way, Autonomous database, again, we lock you down, even in certain types of data types that you can create. So we locked you down on a table which had an XML type, meaning you could not create a table that had an XML type on the Autonomous database before April. So now you can. We enabled it. Still, there are a couple of things you still cannot create. You cannot create a table with a text, spatial and multimedia data types. So we still have them locked down, but we are slowly going to enable it back. So this is a good thing. XML is now enabled, and native URL support in data pump, and also creating XML tables. So this is the same thing as similar to PARS, right? So pre-authenticated URL. So you have a URL in the object store that you can use to access your file, and there are a couple of protocols you can use. The industry standard was Swift, and we enabled Swift protocol when we released the service. Now, last month, we enabled our native protocol. So you don't really have to use the Swift protocol to go and access these files. Swift is still supported. The native also has a support. So it's a lot easy to get the URI. If you're using the native protocol, you can just click on your file, and there is a way you can see the URI or the URL for that file through the native displayed. For Swift, it was not displayed on the UI. You had to know what, what the endpoint would be, sort of, from the documentations. So yeah, those are some of the new things we added since January.
That's a lot. So for more information, please take a look at what's new in the Autonomous Database. I know it says Autonomous Data Warehouse, but these also apply to the database as well, or transaction processing, I should say. Okay, so thanks, Maqsood, for that. That was a great overview. Okay, so next time on Database Cloud Service Office Hours, it's going to be scheduled for June the 12th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. This recording and previous recordings can be found at asktom.oracle.com. We would love your input on the types of topics, or hear what kind of topics, or even the people that you'd like to hear from on our Database Cloud Service Office Hours. Now that you know some of the high-level overview or topics or the services that we'd like to chat with you about on the cloud services. At this time, does anybody have any questions? No, I think we did too good of a job, Maqsood.
You think so?
Well, with that, we'd like to thank you so much for attending today. We really appreciate your attendance, your time, and always, as always, would love your feedback. So please, for future updates to our Database Cloud Service Office Hours, please go to AskTOM and subscribe to the Database Cloud Service Office Hours for updates automatically sent your way. Again, you can also submit questions to future Database Cloud Service Office Hours as well. So with that, I'd like to thank you and sign off. Maqsood, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, all your help today.
Thank you as well.
All right, everybody, have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.